Oh, Velma.
Your full name.
Velma Eileen Potter,
And how old are you today?
94.
And what do you think about that?
I think that's pretty old. It's not a good time.
It's not a good time?
No, it's not. Hooray.
Why not?
Well, because I can't see, I can't hear, I can't walk. All those things that I want to do, I can't. So I don't, I don't like that, but I realize that that's what comes with age. No. I would say the war, was a very dramatic thing, and I think probably never forgot about it for the 4 years that it went on. And you did it without a lot of things, but no, nothing like this. Yes, it was terrible. Yeah, it was, I think that's when they first had the iron lung, and what they did was ram you in the big thing like an MRI, closed you up in there, and so that's, I think, probably why I didn't want to ever have an MRI. But they lived in those darn lungs, and I knew a couple people who had polio, and I felt, really, really sorry for them, because it left some people, left them terribly crippled. It was awful, and they closed the swimming pools, because, I don't know why, because they thought you'd get it, but I don't know why that was. It was kind of a scary time, but not like today. This course is a lot more restrictive. During World War II, you had a lot of things you couldn't have. Like in Indiana, we couldn't get bananas or oranges because the trains and the trucks all hauled stuff for the service. And so it was hard to get from one place to another because the civilians weren't able to get on the trains or even on the buses. And I think Violet and I probably stood a couple of times going from Frankfurt to South Bend, about 100 miles. So people you couldn't get, well, we didn't even have nylons then, but you couldn't get silk stockings, and so people painted the line down their legs. I didn't do that because it was messy, and it didn't make that much difference. Or you wore, we called them anklets then. And I've got some pictures of me look pretty silly, with a nicer dress on and anklets. That was the way it was. I can't think of anything that was 24 hours a day, things you couldn't do, but you were restricted in a lot of ways. Some ways you were restricted because you were a female, or like women couldn't go in bars alone, any place. Even if they served food, you had to go in the building, and but you could not go alone. And I know Violet and I used to stop for a place that was a bar that had hot dogs, which were really good, and you could go to the window in front and get a hot dog, but you couldn't go through the door inside and get one. I always thought that was kind of interesting. You couldn't go a lot of places because people couldn't get gas or tires, so you were pretty well restricted to where you lived. There were a lot of course, a lot of food you couldn't get. Everything was rationed, and we had a book, and you had a coupon for meat, and I don't know what all was in it, but I remember meat, sugar, probably. You didn't have to use your stamps for pork or chicken, but everything else you did. So when you went to a restaurant, I remember that was a pain in the neck to have to use a stamp for whatever kind of meal you chose. But for some reason, ham and chicken, you didn't have to use them. In Indiana, they called them brownouts, where they turned down all the street lights at night, and it was kind of dark, but you could find your way around. Whereas here, they had blackouts where they had no lights on, and you could be fined for not having blinds. It was totally dark. I wasn't here, but that's what your dad said. And you could be fined for having a light that could be seen from, from the top of the hill or from the ocean. We came on the City of San Francisco train from Chicago, and from there we came on a little local train from Frankfurt to South Bend. It was one that, shook on the road. It was a funny little train. And City of San Francisco was a nice train with a dining room and all the amenities. Well, it was fascinating because I'd never seen a mountain. I don't think I'd ever even seen a big river. And, I think there was still snow on the mountains. Never seen the ocean. The whole trip was fascinating. The train, the food was good, and we ate in the dinner car, where they had white linen tablecloths and china. It was all a new adventure all the way. We had a seat that went back. It wasn't a bed, but you could put it back. A chair car, it was called, yeah. We came in chair car. I thought, when I saw San Francisco, I thought, and probably still, it's the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We came across the mountains. I'd never seen a mountain. But when we got to, what is that bay before you get to San Francisco on the train? It was a dirty, awful old place. And I was so disappointed because I heard about the Golden Gate and I said, is this it? But we kept on going. And then when we saw the bay, I just was awestruck. And we went to the ferry building, and Ruth and Leonard were meeting us. And so we met them there and went out the door, and there was a band marching by playing, and it was a parade, and it was Admission Day, September 9th, which they don't observe anymore. And so we stood up. That was the first thing we did when we got into San Francisco. And as you looked up the hill, like toward Twin Peaks, the sky was blue as all get out, except where these big rolling white clouds came rolling down the hills. And I don't know, I think it took me a few days to get my breath. It was just everywhere you looked, everything you did was something I'd never done before, never seen before. So it's kind of like growing up overnight. Well, it was really good to us. We stayed with Ruth and Leonard, who lived on Twin Peaks, and that was a good way to have a first impression. And you could look out and see both bridges from their house. You could see all the way down Market Street, and from their house to down to the next houses below them were these steep stairs, and you had to walk down those to catch the bus in the morning to go to work. Yeah, there's so much to do, or used to be so much to do there, that it's hard to pick out a favorite thing. But we used to go to, what did they call those shows? Sneak previews. And I think they were at midnight, and they would, it would be a coming show, and with them was the movie star, one of the stars of the show, and they would come out and sing if that's what they did, or, perform something live. And so I'd like to go in there. We used to go, there was also a club we used to go to, Violet, Marie, and Nadine and I, and Tom and I, and Art, on Curie Street. And we like to go there because we like the singer. Trying to think of his name, Rusty Draper. And I think, he was well known out here, but I don't know that he ever went beyond that. But when we moved to Santa Clara, we had this nice young boy that would come over and play with Chris. And I think he was a young teenager. I just always thought what a nice boy he was. And the couple, the man was Chinese and she was not, so that I knew this wasn't his son. But that's all I knew about him. And one day he said something about Draper, and I said, "Oh, we used to go and listen to this guy in San Francisco." He said, "That's my dad." I thought that was amazing. I know that I was unsure. I just never thought about getting married. When I was little, I know that I always said I wanted 4 kids, but then that's all I said. And my friend, Mary Beth Douglas, said, she said I wanted 4 kids and get married and have 4 kids. And I said, well, I want to have 4 kids, but I don't want to get married. She said, you can't do that. And I said, yes, you can. And then I named a girl who I knew didn't have a father. It took me a long time to figure that out. So, we probably discussed it because we were married within a week of each other. They were engaged first, but I can't remember what our discussions were. Well, refrigeration, for one thing, because we didn't have anything refrigerated. We had an ice box, and you had to go get ice, or else have the iceman come around and drop it off. And I don't know how often, once a week or something. Mm-hmm. So things didn't get as cold. It wasn't as nice. And no, we didn't have electric lights either when we first moved to Barter Street, where we lived most of our life. So that was a big change. And it, changed all kinds of things because you didn't have electric irons or any kind of the electric cookers that we have then. Mm-hmm. That you have now. Computers.
Cool.
Let's see. It was probably in the 70s. Your grandfather had a friend who owned a service station, Shell station over there on the corner. I think there might still be Shell station there. And he had a plane, and they used to go up in it occasionally. There used to be an airport down there. And he took, I think, Mom and me up in his little plane once, and we just flew around over the Santa Cruz area. Mm-hmm. And then the next time I went on a plane was when Jennifer was born. And let's see, the girls and I went down to the hospital, and we went on the big plane, and the girls wanted to know where they sat because we didn't have assigned seats, and so we asked the stewardess, where do we sit? And she said, any place you want to. She said, you 4 people are the only people on the plane. And so they both wanted to sit by a window and look out. And so we had this big old plane all to ourselves, and I think they had about 12 attendants. Mm-hmm. So you could just think of something and wouldn't even have to say it. I think they'd bring it to you. Mm. Now, of course, it wasn't a very long flight, and so we really enjoyed that. So coming back, we went to get on the plane, and it was so crowded you couldn't move. And what happened was that they had to take a plane down there for another flight, and we were fortunate enough to get that plane that made that trip. We ate a lot more plain things because that's the way people ate in Indiana. And it was only after that I was exposed to spaghetti. That's what a lot of the people in Indiana called it, spaghetti. And but Italian cooking, and I've tried a few other things, French, mm-hmm. But yes, that was the first thing I was exposed to that was foreign. I think in the summer we had cornflakes and raisin bran and grape nuts.
So cereal.
And in the winter, she had rolled oats and cream of wheat, which I didn't like. But and for dinner, did you say dinner too?
And lunch, yeah.
Oh, lunch. Okay. For lunch, Lunch was our dinner in Indiana, and Mom always cooked a meal, and because it was the big meal of the day, so we could have anything. We could have pork chops, which we had a lot, pork because we had pigs, and chicken, and all the garden stuff we ate because we always had a garden. Oh, probably you're talking about outside of family.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I went to a birthday party. I've never gone to one birthday party when I was little, and we were pretty little. They played, what was the thing where you go in the other room and kiss? Post
heard of
office. Post office. Yeah. They don't do that anymore?
I've never heard
Well,
of it.
we were little kids, I don't know, second, third, fourth, some grade like that. And Gordon Yanis was my cousin's cousin. And I kind of had a crush on him. He had black curly hair. That's all I remember about him. And I don't remember how you happened to go in the bedroom with him, but that's what you did. You went in the bedroom and kissed. So that's my first kiss that I remember. Well, we didn't get a lot of Christmas presents because we were very poor, but we got things like Lotto, and I think when Monopoly first came in, we got a Monopoly game, and anyone was a favorite because we didn't get very many. Grandma used to always give it, crochet us a hat, and I don't know what she did for Jim. And my aunt, one Christmas, I think it was Christmas, sent a letter saying that she had sent Violet and me a hat. And the kids wore hats then, so did adults. And so we got the package, and there was like a sailor's cap, velvet, and green. And so she said the green one is for Violet, and that's what she said, the green was for Violet. So, okay, I didn't get a hat, so we told her my hat didn't arrive, and in the meantime, Violet wore her little green hat everywhere, and it had a red band around the bottom. And so once my aunt said, well, I just can't understand because I sent it in the same package. She said one hat was pushed into the other one. And so when I finally got my green hat, it was all faded to the brim because it's been buried for a long time. Well, I just happened to be, when I first came to Northern California, I just happened to be working for the Admiral dealer for the West Coast. And so I got to see the first television in that part of the country, and fascinated. The first thing we saw was the, I can't think what you call it, but the sign that said it's a station.
Test pattern?
Yeah, that was that, yeah. And so we'd just go in and look at that. I was fascinated that, they were able to do all this stuff. And then they did, as they were testing them still, they used to have little short movies that like lasted a half hour or something. I remember Al Jolson was one of them. I think most of them were singers. And they would play those. They were testing, but we could see them in there. And, I couldn't believe that it could be happening. So we bought a television, I think a couple of years later, but we had rabbit ears, then had to have rabbit ears, and we never did get any for it. So we didn't get rabbit ears until after Chris was born. We carried that darn television around, and yeah. And then when we were home a lot with him, we wanted to watch it, so we got rabbit ears. So, and the screen was about that big. Yeah, and it was a table model, was about that big and heavy because they were full of tubes. Eat out.
That's a good one.
I'd say the same thing for frozen dinners. No. Yes. Well, the first books I remember reading were the Bobbsey twins. was a series of these twins who lived on the East Coast, and they were out in the storms and, the rough season. They wore the little yellow jackets and the top of the hats. I was really impressed with that series of books, and I liked, I think it was Albert Payson-Terhune wrote Lad and Lassie, all those books about that, and I liked that series of books, and I can't think of the authors' names. I always had a bunch of favorite authors at any age, and then I moved on to the next one. Oh, gee whiz, I wanted to be everything. When I read the Bobbsey twins, I wanted to, to be on the ocean, I guess fishing or something, which would have scared the devil out of me if I had been able to do it. And I wanted to be an opera singer. I wanted to be a ballet dancer. I can't think of all the things I wanted to be, but I probably told you a million times.
I remember the opera singer.
Yeah.
Didn't you make up a song with Violet?
Yeah. That was our opera. We wore biddy rags, Mom called them, and it was her old dresses, and if she had any shoes that we could wear that were still wearable, we would dress up in biddy rags and sing.
Had you ever seen an opera before, or were you
No.
just okay?
I've only seen 2 operas, and I could have missed them. It would have been fine. I've thought about that a lot of times. I didn't have any. I stumbled from one thing to another, and I didn't purposely try to have some goal in mind. So it was probably that whatever opportunity presented itself. Oh, I had a lot of those too. Tyrone Power. I like Spencer Tracy, but I wouldn't say that you had a crush on him. He wasn't very good looking. I can't even remember who all the stars were then. But I like dancers and singers and those kind of men, artsy men.
Who's your favorite grandkid?
Oh, I'm not going to say that.
But
No.
you have one.
No, I don't think so. I say, look out. I don't know. I had a pink dress when I went to Martha's retirement. And where I got it, I can't remember. Someplace over the hill. I could have had a lot of other favorites too. Oh, when I was little, yeah. The other one was when I was grown. Yellow with brown polka dots on it and a brown tie, yeah. I think Mom made it. I don't know whether Grandma Jacks might have given her the material. I don't know.
You guys are loud.
Of what? No. That one is a hard one too. I love flowers. Probably roses. Has not always been my favorite. Recently I've been leaning toward purple and purple's, what do I want to say? Lavender, purple shades. At one time it was yellow. It was green at one time. I had a favorite green shirt. I like colors. Well, I don't know what it would be, but the reason it would be because it changed my life or somebody else's for the better, whatever it was. Well, now, my mother was, I think, greatest influence on me. She had, you know, a lot of ways. She had a really hard life, and I don't think she ever complained about it. And I think she was able to find, a lot of times, find the good in everything. She, again, she had 4 kids, and she sheltered us when we had thunderstorm and lightning, which I was afraid of. We all were. She would sit down, and she had 2 kids on each side, and she didn't dare move as long as the storm was going on. She read to us when we were little and encouraged us to, when we got a little older, to go to the library, because she told us that it was something that, oh, I can't think of his name now, Andrew Carnegie had donated libraries, I guess, all over the United States, and they were free. Before that time, you had to pay to get a library book. So she encouraged us to use the library. She also told us that voting was a right, and that women had not been able to vote not too many years before, and it was a right and we should vote. All those things really impressed me when I was not very old. I think she was just a really, really good person. My dad was a cement contractor for a good part of his life. As I said, he had a 3rd grade education. His father was a cement contractor, and they did basements, because most everybody had a basement in Indiana, and foundations and sidewalks. And he did bird baths and pretty little things to put in your garden. He did a lot of interesting work with cement, and I was always really proud of him for doing those things, and I don't know how he ever figured them out. I wouldn't know how to figure out, you know, what you needed to put in to make cement, or to where you should put the foundation. So I always thought he was pretty smart. And if he'd had an education, I don't know what he would have done. Because he was 6'2" and very thin. But what I remembered about him when he was little, you know, that he would pick us up and he had big muscles in his skinny arms.
When he was little or when you were little?
When I was little, he picked us up, yeah. He was very strict, and we did what he said, because if he told us he would paddle us, if we did it, we did not do it. So, what else do you want to know about him? He was a cement contractor. He'd done all kinds of things. He worked on the railroad. I think that's what people did in the Depression. Unless they were trained for something, they did whatever was available. He delivered ice for a while when everybody had ice instead of refrigerators. He delivered coal, and he cut down our wood. Usually we had wood for heat in the winter, and I don't know, he just went to the woods and cut it down. I don't know what kind of arrangements they made, but that's what we used. I think he liked to eat. He was thin until he got older, and then finally he gained a little weight, but he was never heavy. He was the 2nd oldest in his family. And he liked to read. He wasn't a very good reader because he's very slow. He only went through 3rd grade. And so although he read a lot, he always read his whole life. It took him a while. And when we got the newspaper, it came in the evening. We had to save it until Dad got home from work, and then he read it first. And we'd sit there because we wanted to, you know, look at the funnies or do something, and it took him a long, long time to read it. I followed Violet around like a puppy, and it never really occurred to me till after she died, you know, that I did that. I was still doing it. And so we were always very close. And I really missed her, because I think that if you ask me who's your best friend, I would have to probably say Violet. And so she was there, you know, my whole life until she died. She was smart. She did well in school, and everybody expected me to come up to her standards, but I didn't do it. And well, it's kind of funny because I said to Doris one time after we were grown, we were talking about growing up together, and she said, well, Jim was spoiled because he was the only boy, which is probably true. Because I'm sure that he got by with some things that girls wouldn't. So I said, Violet, I just accepted her that she was in charge. She and I didn't really have too much to do with Doris as we were growing up, because Doris was 4 years younger than I, and she had all her friends, and we were not among them. She had very different ideas about everything, but after we were grown, we all were very friendly with each other. Mm-hmm. And even though they moved to San Francisco for a year or two, but mostly she lived in Indiana, and then in later years in Georgia and Kentucky. Yeah, I would say we were a close family.
Hmm.
Mom just said she saw it in the newspaper and she liked it.
Hmm.
So it was, she was reading the society page or something. And Violet, of course, it started with a V, and then Velma. And so we asked her once, why did you do that? And she said, well, they just started out that way, and they thought about naming Jim Virgil, and then they're going to name us all V's. And then they decided no. And Grandma Sharp she's funny because she had 9 children, and she didn't do much of anything herself. I think she always had somebody else waiting on her. Her favorite thing to do was go to the hospital. So she'd go at the drop of a hat. And I think that was because they waited on her hand and foot and brought her flowers, and she had pretty bed jackets and that kind of thing. And Grandpa once told me the last time I saw him, when he was still okay, he said, when I met your grandma, she was the prettiest girl in the county, and she still is. So I liked him for that. I would say that Grandpa Sharp, would be your great-grandfather. Well, I remember that he always used to carry those pink mints in his pocket. They weren't wrapped. And he'd always give me a pink mint or two whenever I saw him. Was Martha. Well, what I remembered about her was that she didn't really care. She'd love to go to the hospital. That was her favorite thing to do. She went a few times in her life, and she'd get all prettied up to go. She'd have a good time when she was there and have lots of company, probably because she had 9 children. Oh, she loved tomatoes, yeah. Everything. She probably made cakes with tomatoes in them. I didn't really know. I saw him maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. He died just after Violet and I came to California. She lived in South Bend most of the time I was growing up, but for a while she lived next door to us in a room. And usually 3 months out of the year she would live with us because Mom worked at the canning factory, and so she would stay there with us while Mom worked. So we were always really close to her. She loved to cook, and she just did all kinds of things, and they were always good. She used to braid my hair when I was little, and I have slippery hair and straight, and the hair would all stick out from the braids. She put it up put my hair up on curlers with rags, and you roll it up and tie it at night. And when you took the rag out in the morning, mine came down kind of crinkly, and then all this brush at the bottom. Let's see. I don't know. She too was somebody that I really admired. No, I don't think so. Not growing up. After when I worked at the phone company, the guys all called me Red because my my hair. A lot of people call it red, and so yeah, that was my nickname. And then after I got married, people called me VIP, because I was a VIP. But those are the only nicknames I can think of that anybody ever called me. Ray probably called me something because he never called anybody by their name.